All right, get ready to dive deep because today we are all about crushing it at that veterinary technician interview.
I'm excited.
We've got a ton of great resources to help you out.
Yeah.
Career guides, a list of the most common interview questions, even some help from our AI friend over at RoleCatcher. So let's turn those interview jitters into pure excitement and confidence.
Definitely.
Are you ready to show them your passion for animals and land your dream job?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so I've got this list of common interview questions in front of me. And the first one is, can you tell us about your experience handling and restraining animals? Um, I think I might just start talking about my cat growing up, but I'm guessing they're looking for something a little bit more professional.
It's awesome that you have that personal connection with animals, but yeah, you're right.
Okay.
The interviewer really wants to see that you have the skills and that you can be professional. So instead of just telling a story, try focusing on the specific training you've had. Like, did you volunteer at a shelter? Have you shadowed a technician? Did you learn specific restraint techniques? If so, definitely mention those
Right.
because it shows that you understand how important it is to keep everyone safe
Absolutely.
and to prioritize animal welfare, which is huge.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of what's important, the career guide mentions that the demand for vet techs is really, really growing, like a projected 19% growth from 2018 to 2028.
It's amazing, right?
That's wild.
It really is.
Does that kind of growth affect how we should approach these interview questions?
Absolutely. I mean, that kind of growth just goes to show how important skilled vet techs are becoming to practices.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're highlighting your passion for this field. Talk about how much you love to learn, your commitment to growing professionally. All of that becomes even more important. So let's say the interviewer follows up with, have you ever had to restrain an aggressive animal? How would you go about answering that?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I would probably focus on a time when I was able to stay calm, really put safety first, and then use the right restraint techniques for that situation. Maybe even an example where I had to use a muzzle or a towel wrap. Because the guide really emphasizes safety as
Sure.
one of the core
Yeah,
responsibilities.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They really want to see that you can handle these tough situations without, putting anyone at risk,
Right.
yourself or the animal. And the career guide actually mentions that as a vet tech, you're often the one advocating for the animal, making sure they're okay during stressful procedures. So if you emphasize how calm you stayed and how you use safe handling, that shows you can really advocate for them.
That's a really good point.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. How do you prioritize tasks in a fast-paced veterinary setting? That feels like it could be a really long answer.
Yeah. It's hard to sum up a whole crazy day, right?
Right.
I think it's important to be organized, though. So, thinking about the systems you use, to-do lists, color-coded appointments, just ways that you mentally check things off in your head. And if you're not using any of those things, this might be a good time to start.
Absolutely.
Because the guide also mentions that a vet tech is often the central hub of information in the entire clinic, which is a big responsibility.
Yeah, it really is. And, just by explaining your system or prioritizing, you're kind of showing that you understand how important that central role is and how you can make sure everything runs smoothly in the clinic.
Okay.
And if you really want to impress them, you could give a specific example using the STAR method. Like how you had to completely rearrange your to-do list when an emergency case came in.
Oh, that's good.
All right, ready for the next one. Can you describe your experience with surgical preparation and assistance? Now, I haven't actually had a ton of hands-on experience in surgery. So how would you approach a question like that without sounding like you don't know anything?
It's always best to be honest, right? But you can still present it in a positive light. Talk about anything you've seen. Observing procedures, prepping the surgical suite, sterilizing instruments, even just shadowing another technician during surgery is really valuable.
Absolutely.
And it shows that you're eager to learn, you understand the basics of how surgery works, and don't forget, even entry-level technicians can play a big part in surgical procedures, according to the guide.
Exactly. It's a team effort. So even if you're not the one performing the surgery, you're a crucial part of the surgical team. You want to highlight your attention to detail, following those sterile techniques perfectly, and your understanding of the whole surgical process from start to finish. All of that shows how much you bring to the table. And don't forget to mention any specific training you've had, even if it was just a quick course.
Right.
Now, have you ever heard of RoleCatcher? They have this really cool AI that gives you feedback on your practice interview responses.
Yes. I'm really curious about that.
It's basically like having a coach right there with you, you know?
Oh, wow.
You can record yourself answering these common interview questions, and RoleCatcher will analyze how you sound, what you're saying, all of it. Then it gives you tips on how to improve.
So it's like a mock interview, but with expert analysis.
Exactly.
That sounds amazing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. What a great way to see where I can really make my answers shine. I think that will be so helpful for this next question. How do you ensure accurate medical record keeping? It seems pretty straightforward, but I want to make sure my answer really stands out.
RoleCatcher can definitely help you polish that one up. Like, it can tell you where to add more specific examples or how to weave in some of your key skills, maybe even suggest some better phrasing.
Ew.
You know, interviewers are going to be looking for someone who is super detail-oriented in this role. And the career guide actually talks about how important it is to have clear and concise medical records.
Yep.
It helps ensure that the animal gets the best possible care, and it even protects the practice legally.
Wow.
So if you show that you understand that, it shows you're really thinking beyond just the basic task.
Okay.
All right, here's another question. Can you describe your experience with radiography? Now, I've mostly just seen x-rays being taken. I haven't really run the equipment myself. Is that going to be a problem?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
It's more about showing that you understand the whole process and the safety protocols involved. So even if you haven't actually used the machine, you can still talk about positioning techniques, how to be safe around radiation and making sure those images are clear.
That's a great point. And if you
Okay.
have any experience developing x-rays or using those digital radiography systems, definitely mention that too.
Right.
Showing that you're familiar with all the different tech, even if you haven't used it a ton, means you're adaptable.
Okay.
You're willing to learn. Now, what if they follow up with, have you ever had to restrain an animal for an x-ray? What techniques did you use?
All right, that's where I can show off those animal handling skills. I talk about using gentle restraint, making sure the animal feels safe, working quickly and efficiently to keep the stress down.
Yeah.
And, of course, always keeping safety top of mind. The career guide actually says that a technician's ability to keep animals calm and handle them confidently makes a huge difference in the quality of care. And it helps get better diagnostic imaging, too.
That's a really good connection.
Yeah.
When you link your answer back to those insights from the guide, it shows the interviewer that you've not only prepared for the questions, but you've really thought about all the different sides of this job.
Okay, I like that.
And speaking of thinking deeply, RoleCatcher also has this AI that analyzes your CV.
Oh, yeah. I want to hear more about that.
It's like having your own career coach, but for your resume. So you upload your CV, and RoleCatcher compares it to the specific job you're going for. Then it points out places you could make it stronger.
Wow.
It even suggests skills you might have that you haven't even thought to include.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you end up with a CV that's basically tailor-made for the employer. Okay, ready for the next question. Can you describe your experience with laboratory testing and analysis?
Let's do it. I've actually got some experience with basic lab procedures. Things like collecting samples, doing urinalysis, prepping fecal samples.
Okay.
I definitely talk about those and highlight how I'm detail-oriented, good at following instructions, and always committed to safety. And I remember from the career guide that lab work is one of the key responsibilities for a vet tech, especially in those busy practices.
That's a great point. By framing your answer using insights from the guide, you're really showing them that you get what this job is all about.
Okay.
Now, let's say the interviewer asks, can you give me an example of a time when you got an unexpected result from a lab test? What did you do? How would you answer that one?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I'd want to show that I can problem solve and that I'm really committed to patient care.
Right.
Maybe I could talk about a time when I noticed a blood sample result that just didn't seem right.
Yeah.
And then I double-checked everything, talked to the vet, and followed all the procedures to make sure everything was reported accurately and the animal was safe. The guide also mentions that technicians are often the ones who catch potential problems and let the vet know, so that would be a good thing to emphasize too.
You're totally right. When you add those insights, you're not just answering the question, you're showing them that you're proactive when it comes to patient care.
Right.
And that you get how important the technician is in the diagnostic process.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for another one. Can you give an example of a time when you had to deal with a difficult or upset client? I always feel like that one gets a little personal.
It does, right.
Yeah.
Because working with animals can be really emotional, and sometimes clients are just understandably stressed out. So I think I'd want to highlight that I'm empathetic, that I can communicate well, and that I can de-escalate those tense situations. Like Maybe I could share an example of a client who was really nervous about their pet's upcoming surgery.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I could talk about how I really listened to their worries, answered their questions patiently and clearly, and just tried to put them at ease. I think the career guide even talks about how client communication is a crucial skill for vet techs. It's not just about the animals.
You are absolutely right. It's about the whole experience. So by showing them that you can handle those tough client interactions with compassion and that you can be professional no matter what, you're showing them that you get that whole picture approach to patient care.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of showing them what you know, let's talk about RoleCatcher again. Their AI can help you customize your answers to fit specific jobs and company cultures.
Okay, I'm curious about that. How would that work with this specific question about handling tough clients?
Well, RoleCatcher can look at the job description and the company's website and figure out their values and how they communicate.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
It's cool, right? Yeah. It might suggest you use certain keywords or focus on specific soft skills or even change your examples to match their style of interacting with clients.
I like that.
Okay, ready for the next one. Can you tell us about a time when you had to work under pressure to meet a deadline or complete a task?
Bring it on. I'm feeling so much more prepared now.
I love to hear that. Now remember, the key here is to show them that you can stay calm, prioritize what needs to get done, and still get things done even when it's super busy. Think about a specific example where you had to juggle a bunch of things at once. Maybe it was a crazy busy shift or when an emergency popped up out of nowhere.
Oh, I remember one time we had this huge rush of patients all at once, and the phones were like ringing nonstop.
Oh, wow.
It was intense. I was triaging animals as they came in, helping the vet with the urgent cases, and I still had to do all the regular stuff like medication refills and talking to clients.
Okay, that's a great example. You want to highlight how you prioritized everything, how you delegated tasks if you could, and how you stayed calm and organized in the middle of all that chaos. And remember what the career guide says, vet techs are often the glue that holds a busy practice together.
Right.
So showing that you can handle those high-pressure situations is really, really important.
Okay, that makes sense. So the next question is, can you describe your experience with emergency and critical care situations? Now, I haven't had a ton of direct experience with those yet, but I have shadowed some experienced technicians during those kinds of procedures.
That's a great start. Even if you weren't the main person handling those situations, you can still talk about what you saw, what you learned, and the skills you picked up. Like, did you help with CPR, triage patients as they came in, or monitor their vital signs?
Yeah, I did. I assisted with giving oxygen, keeping track of their heart rate and breathing, and getting medications ready.
Perfect. Really emphasize those things. And don't forget to mention any specific training you have in emergency and critical care, like CPR for animals or how to do first aid. The career guide actually points out that even entry-level techs can be really important in emergencies.
Okay.
So showing them you're prepared and ready to learn is key.
That's good to know. This next question is always a little tricky for me. Can you describe your experience with client education and communication? I know it's a big part of the job, but I'm never sure how much detail clients actually want.
Yeah, that's a common thing to wonder about. But remember, good client communication means you can take all that complicated medical stuff and explain it in a way that anyone can understand. It's about listening to their concerns, being empathetic, and making sure they have all the info they need to take good care of their pet.
So instead of just listing off the procedures I've explained, I should focus on how I've changed my communication style based on the client and the situation.
Exactly. Think of specific times where you had to adjust how you were talking to someone. Maybe a client was really anxious, or maybe you had to explain a really complex procedure in super simple terms.
Okay.
And remember, the career guide talks about how important it is to build trust and rapport with clients. If you can show them that you're good at building those relationships, it means you understand how important the client experience is.
Right. Okay. I'm writing that down. This next question always makes me a little nervous. What are your strengths and weaknesses as a veterinary technician? Like, how do you talk about your weaknesses without making it sound like you're not qualified for the job?
It's all about how you frame it.
Okay.
For your strengths, focus on the things that are really important for this job and give examples like, are you good at handling animals? Are you super detail-oriented? Can you stay calm when things get stressful?
I'm definitely a people person. I think I'm really good at connecting with both animals and their owners.
There you go. That's perfect. And remember, RoleCatcher's AI can help you figure out what your strongest skills are based on the job description.
Oh, okay.
You can use that feedback to tailor your answer and really highlight the qualities that will impress them the most. Now, when you talk about your weaknesses, choose something you're honestly working on improving and put a positive spin on it.
So instead of saying, I'm not great with lab equipment, I could say something like, I'm constantly learning more about lab procedures and improving my skills by taking online courses and looking for hands-on training.
Exactly. It shows them that you know what you need to work on, that you're dedicated to learning and growing, and that you take the initiative to get better. And speaking of growing, the career guide talks about how important it is to keep learning and getting certifications to stay on top of things in this field because it's always changing.
It is, yeah.
If you can work that into your answer, it shows that you're in it for the long haul.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all fits together. It's not just about answering each question, it's about showing them you understand the whole picture.
You got it. All right, next question. How do you stay organized and manage your time effectively? This is where you can really show them you're an organization's superstar.
Well, when you're in a busy vet practice, staying organized is super important. I use my digital calendar and my task management app all the time to keep track of appointments, deadlines, and important to-dos.
Great. And don't forget to mention any other strategies you use, like how you decide what's most important, if you delegate tasks, or if you use things like color-coded charts to help you.
Oh yeah, I love color coding.
Yeah, me too.
It helps me see everything clearly and keeps things from falling through the cracks.
I also make daily to-do lists to make sure I'm focusing on the most urgent stuff.
Those are great examples, and remember, the career guide talks about clear communication, especially when it comes to medical records and instructions for clients.
So you could tie your organizational skills to those responsibilities. It shows them that you understand how it all connects.
Okay.
Now, what if they ask, can you give an example of a time when you had to juggle a lot of different things? How did you manage your time?
I think I can handle that one. I could talk about a specific time when I had to deal with tons of tasks at the same time, maybe during a busy surgery day, or when we had a bunch of emergencies come in.
Yeah.
I would explain how I prioritized, delegated when I could, and just try to stay calm and organized, even though it was crazy.
Exactly. You want to really paint a picture for them. Show them that you can handle the pressure and stay focused. All right, next question. How do you handle working with distressed or aggressive animals? Now's your chance to really show off those animal handling skills.
I'm all about animal welfare, and safety is always my #1 priority when I'm working with animals who are scared or aggressive. I've been trained in low-stress handling techniques, and I always pay close attention to their body language so I can anticipate what they might do.
Okay, good.
I also know it's important to use the right restraint methods, like muzzles or towel wraps when we need to keep everyone safe, the animal and the team.
That's a great start. And you can make it even stronger by adding in some of the things you learned from the career guide. It emphasizes how important it is for technicians to understand animal behavior and recognize those signs of stress or fear.
Yeah, I remember reading that. It also said that building trust with animals, even the ones who are scared or anxious, is so important for giving them good care.
Exactly. When you connect your answer back to those insights, it shows the interviewer that you didn't just prepare for the interview, you really thought about what it means to be a vet tech.
I like that.
Okay, now what if the interviewer follows up with, can you describe a specific time when you had to handle an aggressive animal? What did you do?
This is where I share a story about how I've handled those tough situations calmly and effectively.
Okay, good.
I could talk about a specific time when I had to restrain an animal who was scared or aggressive, maybe for a procedure they needed. I'd explain what I did to keep them as calm as possible, how I made sure everyone was safe, and how I was still gentle and caring with the animal. And I'd also mention how I talked to the owner, kept them in the loop, and made sure they felt okay about everything.
Perfect. Remember, it's all about painting a clear picture for the interviewer, showing them your skills, your experience, and how much you care about the animals and making sure the clients are happy. All right, let's move on to a question that lets you show your dedication to the profession. How do you handle confidential information?
I know that keeping things confidential is super important in a vet practice. I understand the rules and regulations, and I'm committed to protecting the privacy of every patient.
That's a great start. And remember, you can make your answer even better by giving specific examples of how you've kept things confidential in your past jobs or volunteer positions.
Oh, that's a good idea. I could mention specific times when I handled sensitive patient information carefully, followed all the data security rules, and made sure client conversations were private.
Exactly. Those details will really show them that you get how important confidentiality is in a healthcare setting. Now, what if they follow up with, can you give me an example of a time when you had to keep something confidential in a really tricky situation?
That's a tough one. I'd have to think about a situation where I had to find the right balance between protecting a patient's privacy and making sure they were okay, maybe a situation where two clients were disagreeing, or when a client wanted information about someone else's pet.
That's a great example. The key here is to show your integrity, your professionalism, and your commitment to doing what's right, even when things are difficult. All right, let's move on to a question that lets you highlight your people skills. How do you handle working with a diverse team of colleagues?
I really enjoy working with people from all sorts of backgrounds and with different perspectives. It makes things more interesting, and everyone brings something unique to the team.
I love that attitude. The interviewer wants someone who's respectful, adaptable, and can communicate well with people from all walks of life.
So I should emphasize that I can listen well, communicate clearly, and work together with others to achieve common goals.
Exactly. And specific examples are always a good idea. Can you think of a time when you had to change your communication style to work effectively with a colleague who had a different personality or way of doing things?
Oh, yeah. I once worked on a project with a colleague who was super focused on the details,
Okay.
and I tend to focus on the big picture.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out how to communicate effectively so that we covered everything that needed to be done.
Perfect. That's a great example of figuring out how to work with different styles. And remember, the career guide talks about how important teamwork is in a vet practice. You can tie your answer back to that, showing them you understand how individual strengths can come together to create a successful team. All right, let's move on to a question that lets you express your goals for the future. What are your long-term career goals?
Okay, here's my chance to show them my ambition and what I want to achieve in the future.
Right.
I'm really passionate about animal dentistry,
Okay.
and I would love to specialize in that area someday. I'm already taking continuing education courses and looking to different ways to specialize.
That's fantastic. And remember, you can also talk about how this particular job fits into your long-term goals, even if it's not your ultimate goal. Like, how will this experience help you get the skills and knowledge you need for your future aspirations?
Oh, that's a good point. I can emphasize that this role gives me a solid foundation in general veterinary medicine, which is essential for any specialization. It also helps me develop those key skills in client communication, teamwork, and handling all kinds of different patients.
Exactly. By connecting your answer back to the specific job, you're showing them that you're not just thinking about your own ambitions, you're also thinking about how you can contribute to the practice.
Right.
Now, what if they ask, what are you doing to achieve those long-term goals?
Bring it on. I can talk about specific courses I'm taking, conferences I'm planning to go to, professional organizations I've joined, or even shadowing opportunities I'm pursuing.
Excellent. Those details really show them that you're proactive about your professional development and committed to reaching your goals. And speaking of commitment, the career guide talks about how important it is to find a practice that shares your values.
It does, yeah.
So have you done any research on this practice?
Yeah, actually. I've looked into their mission statement and how they approach animal care, and I'm really impressed with how dedicated they are to compassionate, high-quality veterinary services.
That's fantastic. You're already thinking like a pro. Okay, let's tackle a question that often comes up towards the end of an interview. What are your salary expectations?
Ooh, that one always makes me nervous.
Yeah.
How do I answer that without sounding like I'm asking for too much or selling myself short?
First things first, do your research. Websites like RoleCatcher have salary data for different vet roles in your area.
Oh, okay.
Then think about your own experience and what you bring to the table.
So I need to find a balance between what the market says and what I think my skills are worth.
Exactly. And instead of giving them one specific number, it's usually better to give them a range,
Okay.
It shows that you're flexible.
So something like, based on my research and experience, I'm looking for a salary between X and Y.
Perfect. It shows them you've done your homework and you're open to talking about it. Now, what if they really push you for a specific number?
I would just repeat my range and emphasize that I'm more interested in finding the right fit for my skills and values.
Excellent. That shows them that you're more interested in the opportunity itself, not just the money. Okay, let's move on to a question that can really help you stand out. Do you have any questions for us?
All right, time to turn the tables.
Exactly.
This is my chance to show them that I'm really interested and curious.
You got it. What kind of questions have you come up with?
Well, I'd like to ask about their approach to mentorship and professional development. I'm also curious about the practice's philosophy on communicating with clients, and I'd love to know more about the opportunities for growth within the practice.
Those are great questions. They show that you're eager to learn, you're committed to growing professionally, and you want to be a valuable member of their team. Now, one last piece of advice before we wrap things up. Don't underestimate the power of a thank you note.
Oh, yeah.
A nice thank you after the interview can really make you stand out. It shows them you're still interested.
Right. It's a little thing, but it makes a big difference. Should I send a handwritten note, or is an email okay?
Either way is fine, but think about the specific practice and how they do things. If they seem more traditional, a handwritten note could be a really nice touch, but if they're super techy, a quick email is totally fine.
Okay, that makes sense. What should I actually say in the thank you note?
Keep it short and sincere. Thank them for their time, and then mention one of the key points or skills you talked about during the interview. You could even bring up something specific you learned about the practice that you liked.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
I'll make sure to jot down a few notes right after the interview so I don't forget those details.
perfect. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a minute to think about everything we've covered. We talked about what it means to be a vet tech, we went through all those common interview questions, and we even learned about some amazing resources like RoleCatcher.
It's been so helpful. I feel way more prepared and confident about going into my interview.
That's great to hear. Remember, practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the more natural and confident you'll sound. And don't forget to let your passion for animals and your dedication to providing amazing care really shine through.
Absolutely. I'm excited to show them what I know, what I can do, and how much I love this profession.
You're going to do great. We're rooting for you.
And to all our listeners out there getting ready for their vet tech interviews, we're here to support you every step of the way. Be sure to check out the show notes for all the resources we mentioned, including that link to RoleCatcher.
And remember, the best way to nail that interview is to dive deep, practice those answers, and let your love for animals shine through.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.